Welcome to this lecture about coping with grief, anxiety, and depression in a time of global crisis. When you work with a computer, you all know that we have hardware and software. That's also the case with the climate crisis. Hardware is here the practical solutions. They build on technological inventions and the shift to a circular economy, among others. Software is about psychology. It's about how thoughts, values, and emotions determine how people react to knowledge about climate change, and whether or not they will act on this knowledge. This lecture is about how you best can deal with the strong emotional impacts of climate change, as you find them in yourself and in others. If the emotions are not dealt with adequately, they will, like all kinds of software, stop you from acting appropriately. Learning about this will make you able to help yourself and others to transform apathy into adequate climate action together. All journeys into working with emotions in an adequate way starts with recognizing the emotions in yourself. Having done that, you will also be able to empathize with others, being able to help them dealing with their emotions, and this is an important skill for a good climate teacher. Therefore, I will now offer you tools to cope with these emotions, both in yourself and among your co-teachers, and help groups of students to cope. Denial is the problem. Most people are not willing to face a threatening reality. Therefore, we are equipped with defense mechanisms. One of the most important ones of those is denial. The emotions hiding behind this denial can mostly be described as grief, anxiety, and depression. Many years ago, I learned this formula. It says basically that when you are alone, having no one to talk to, and receive scary information, you are left feeling powerless versus the threats, and this leads to paralysis. If you're together with others in solidarity and trust, the scary information will lead to raised awareness among all of you. And this raised awareness combined with the solidarity among you will help you to transform the paralysis and apathy to outwards action together. In addition, it will move you away from sadness and move you toward anger and passion. Please note that anger is a neutral emotion. It's not destructive by nature. For example, aggression is the power behind all kinds of sports. There's aggression behind the kick of a football player. But many people only consider aggression as a negative drive. Feeling depressed means I cannot, because I'm not connected to any energy of my own. That again means that reconnecting to your own energy, your own passion, brings you out of depression and into the realm of action. I'm a psychologist, trained expert in the field of psychology. But you are you, and you are the only expert regarding you. I will not be able to tell you anything new about yourself unless you are prepared to face it, or to put it a little bit differently, unless you already know. If you're not prepared to face it, you will reject my statement about you. Therefore, In psychology, learning means finding out that you already know. And doing means demonstrating that you know it. And teaching means reminding others that they know just as well as you. And on this journey, we are all learners, doers, and teachers. I must admit that I didn't invent this myself. I read it in a book by Richard Bach in the 70s, but I still find it very true and stimulating. From time to time, we hear messages about the possible collapse of our civilization as a consequence of climate change and ecological collapse. Rupert Reed, one of the leaders of Extinction Rebellion in England, gave this very inspiring speech in 2018. He basically says that this civilization is finished. You may agree or disagree with this, but I strongly advise you to listen to his speech, because he continues, so what should be done? His most important message to us now is that we all need to start talking to our peers about our feelings related to climate change. We need to start sharing them in a supportive environment with people we trust. The point here being that dealing with the emotions in order to transform denial and apathy to collective action. As you see here, the emotional impact of climate change is most often anxiety, grief, and depression. So let's first talk about grief. It's a natural reaction when we are confronted with serious loss or threats of serious loss. This is grieving. The loss or the potential loss is a process that takes time and should be allowed to follow its own path and time frame, and take the time it needs. But when we talk about grieving the loss of our present lifestyle and our role as a consumer in a society based on capitalism's quest for eternal growth, I think there's another option. And that option is finding out if we can do better than that, if we can create another world better than the one we know. And remember, one of the goals of this course is actually to visualize and create a much more beautiful future for humanity. And we will do it. The world as we know it has many disadvantages, and it should not be difficult to visualize an alternative. For example, this quote from Tim Jackson. He's an economist and author of many books, among others, one called Prosperity Without Growth, strikes an important note. He says the following: "It's the story about us, the people, being persuaded to spend money we don't have on things we don't need, to create impressions that won't last on people we don't care about." I have paraphrased him as a comment to my image here. I say it's the story of us, the people, rushing through life like a shadow of ourselves, moving from past to future without enjoying the present moment, surrounded by the illusions of technology, on a non-stop, high-speed journey, afraid to be late for our own funeral. So yes, we can, we will, and we must create a much better world than the one we have to let go. And this is a much better strategy than grieving the old one. Let's start sharing our visions of a much better world. Now let's talk about mindfulness. Practicing mindfulness is a very powerful tool to help coping with difficult emotions. In a trusted social context, it will prove very efficient, and in the following I will explain why and how. The most important aspects of mindfulness training are first, learning to stay focused in the present moment instead of letting the mind wander to the past or the future. You may think that this is easy, but most people tend to have difficulties with it and need to practice. The second part of it is distancing yourself from your emotions by watching them passing by, like a movie, instead of letting them overwhelm you. In the following, I will go through some exercises you can start with, but you can also find many mindfulness exercises in YouTube. When something threatening is approaching, it may create a feeling of panic. If this hits me, everything will be destroyed with it. Then it's time to remember that even a tsunami does not tear down everything. After the storm, the base is still there. In the following, I will talk about anxiety and depression, which, even if our culture sees them as conditions that can be diagnosed, maybe even illnesses, they can also be seen as a consequence of our lifestyle. For example, have you noticed that these negative emotions often turn up when we are bored, meaning that we are not mentally occupied by something interesting? Therefore, the cure is obvious. Get a passion. You cannot be passionately involved in an activity and at the same time feel depressed. What you fear is never present now. It's always something in the future. Maybe in a few seconds, maybe in an hour, a week, or years ahead. But it's never here and now. So, if you have ever lived with a cat, you know that the cat is the ultimate teacher in this, because it's always centered in the present moment, never caring about the future, never caring about the past. So, anxiety is about the future, therefore learning to focus on something happening now is essential. And what is always with us? And what can we always focus on? Our breathing. And this simple exercise is a very good basic exercise. Breathing deeply and calmly into your belly with full attention on the air moving up and down inside your body at the same time. It's the simplest yet most powerful tool to move your attention from a threatening future to a calming and comforting now. And the good thing is that it's always possible to focus on your breathing. Obviously, it's easier to focus on the breathing when we sit or lie, rather than when we are moving. But moving gives us another target we can focus on: the moving parts of our body. For example, like this. Try walking very slowly. Do not worry about what lies ahead. You are a moving organism that enjoys the movement in itself and does not care about what you're heading for, where you're going. It's the walk, the process itself that's important, not the goal, not the destination. Another option, when you need to do a job you don't like, you have a golden opportunity to practice mindfulness. Changing focus from the result of what you're doing to the bodily process of doing it. For me, washing dishes by hand was one such opportunity. The practice is like this. Do the dishes without focusing on transforming a stack of dirty dishes on one side of the sink to a clean pile of dishes on the other. Instead, focus on the body, which during the process is at ease with itself and performs a number of routine movements and, strangely enough, is becoming charged with energy while doing it. That is provided you keep the focus on body and movement, meaning staying in the process, disregarding the result. And then as a final example, here is an exercise where you can find out that something which might otherwise exhaust your physical body can instead charge you with energy. If you can, this is about trying to walk extremely fast and finding out that you can walk for hours without getting tired, with total attention on all the partial movements in the body's moving parts, the soles of the feet, the ankles, the knees, and the hips. I suggest you start slowly and gradually speed up, keeping the focus on soles, ankles, knees, and hips as you speed up. You may eventually add the notion of a cord attached to your navel, pulling you forward, and a balloon full of gas on top of the head, ensuring that your head is straight on your spine. This should be, the look should be diffuse, not focused on anything. If you walk in this way, you will be surprised to discover that you reach your destination full of energy in spite of walking fast and far. As I said before, mindfulness has another side to it also. The possibility of choosing to be an observer or a witness to, rather than being flooded and overwhelmed by streams of thoughts and emotions. The training typically involves imagining the emotions and thoughts as a film strip, which you can practice watching from a distance without getting involved in the single scenes of the film. Just watch the ongoing changes passing by. Not passing through you, but passing by you. It's recommended to practice mindfulness every day, and there are many free resources available. And here are some short and very simple tips about how to practice. Finally, in this age of high-tech and smartphones, here's a link to a review of some mindfulness apps, which you can have on your phone, of course. Now let's change the subject to depression. A person suffering from depression is often characterized by some typical character traits and certain automated behaviors. In the following, I will go through them and for each of them offer some coping strategies. The character traits are often a direct consequence of a combination of their upbringing and the effects of their social life. And the first one is living a life of duties, primarily trying to do what is expected from you rather than what you feel like doing. The next is a tendency to become sorry rather than angry. Then automatically blaming oneself when something goes wrong. Very rarely allowing oneself to become angry. When asked to do something, always accepting and saying yes. Always being kind, friendly, and polite, regardless of what you feel inside. Never thought much about your own wishes, dreams, and desires. They drowned under the weight of the duties. This pattern is often a consequence of a life of oppression. Always alone with your sorrows and worries, the thought of talking to others about it was never there. Obviously, one of the most important counter strategies is learning to say no. Not automatically accept the demands from other people. Also learning not to take another's person's share of the guilt. Learning to distinguish about what is yours and what is caused by someone else or something else. It's important to start setting boundaries and stick to them. Only to hear and no longer. Assert yourself by setting up your limits. And dare to be angry and show it. It's not dangerous, it's healthy. It helps you keep your own borders, your own limits. Start talking to others about what you feel. That will give you an option to have feedback about how others view things and what others consider important. So, during my professional career, when I talk to depressed people and ask them what they want or what they feel like doing, they most often say, "I don't know," or "Oops, nobody ever asked me that before." That needs to change. It's important to listen to and accept your wishes, your dreams and desires, and say no to continued oppression. Nobody knows you when you are down and out. That's a song by Eric Clapton. And it's very true. People tend to avoid contact with people who radiate grief or depression. But it's extremely important that other people try to reach out, giving an opportunity to get out of isolation. And this is even more true when it comes to the emotions regarding climate change and environmental disruption. So to conclude, getting together in climate action groups and start sharing thoughts and emotions with like-minded people is important in order to make the transition from apathy to action. Mutual support from people we trust is what is needed for this process. Now, as a final act, let us together connect to the heart, the mind, and the soul of planet Earth in a mindful practice. This meditation for global climate harmonization was recorded during COP21 at the Paris Climate Summit. And it's done by Shahabuddin David Less. It will follow the video with this mindfulness practice will follow after this slideshow.
It's our job tonight.
So let's begin by just being aware, being conscious of our physical breath. And imagine, I'm sure many of you have dreamt this, that your breath is liquid, not air. Imagine that you're underwater, but somehow you can breathe. Just a natural breath. Now imagine that you're not breathing alone. That there's another being that's breathing liquid into you as you inhale. So you're drawing in their liquid and you're breathing liquid into them as you exhale. This is the signal. This is the message that we're not alone. Someone is here with us, breathing with us. And we're sharing the elixir of life, the breath. Now, in our imagination, we're going to make a shift. Instead of a person or a being sitting with us, we're going to be sitting here, and the whole of planet Earth is going to be the other being. So as we breathe out our liquid breath, planet Earth is going to breathe in. And as we breathe in, planet Earth is going to breathe itself into us. So that we become planet Earth, and planet Earth becomes us. Now continue that, but instead of the body of the planet, imagine that the mind of planet Earth becomes our mind, and our mind becomes the mind of planet Earth. And a word of caution: don't fear the thoughts of your own mind. Just try and direct the liquid breath into your mind, into the mind of planet Earth. If there are little blips or odd thoughts, they'll come in and they'll go out. But the focus should be on calming the mind of planet Earth. Not so chaotic. Now the last step, we're going to breathe into our own heart, not necessarily the physical heart, but the center of love in our being. And we're going to connect that with the heart center of planet Earth. Heart to heart, like two lovers merging into one. Let's do one more step. And this last moment requires prayer, whatever that means to you. For me, I often think I'm uniting my will with the will of God to bring about, in this case, hopefully, awakening. The awakening of the collective consciousness into a more cooperative form. So my prayer, and you'll do your own, would be in unison with the will of God. I will to have global awakening. But use any words you wish, or no words at all. But somehow we're using our individual power to direct the holy breath so that the shift, which is necessary, occurs. Now, usually at the end of a practice like this, it's very wise to just stop for a moment and think, it is so, it will happen, it can be. I have faith. So when you're ready, when you feel it, just open your eyes.